It is the Final Word Daily. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon together for the first time in a long time with you here at the North Gate of Lords, thanks to Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm, and New Brew, which I've got a bottle of down there and I'll pick up before we talk about them in the middle of the show. But before all of that, Jeff's going to tell you about the day in 30 seconds. Shoot.
Well, South Africa decided that they'd like to have a bowl, which felt like the way they needed to get into the game, and it worked initially. They had Australia 67 for 4 for 67 at the lunch break. Rabada and Jansen taking wickets between them. Then Smith recovers. It was 79 runs that he put on with Bo Webster, and then Webster and Carey 44. I reckon they put on before the tail fell away. 8 wickets between Jansen and Rabada. A couple for the spinners. 212. They were in a good position, but they lost 4 before the close. They're 4 for, 30? Not a lot.
4 for 43. 4 for 43 is the score at the close.
They were 4 for 30 when the fourth went down.
Feels about right. Yes, they were 4 for 30. So, yeah, I mean, it was a day of some pretty significant interventions. So the 7th over was where Rabada finds the outside edge twice, and just as importantly, 2 terrific bits of catching. Like, it's never easy when the slips are close together. Jeremy Coney on commentary was talking of this. They weren't especially well spaced out, which means you've got to know when to pick your spots. And I'll tell you what, Markram was diving in front of Bettingham for that Khawaja one, but Bettingham held his nerve, held his pose, took the low catch, and then, well, not low catch, the quick catch, sorry. Then there was the low one from Markram later in the over to get rid of Green for 4. So a 20-ball duck for Khawaja, occupational hazard, gets a great ball from Rabada, which goes counter-cyclically up the slope from round the wicket. Terrific bowling, the sign of things to come. And then Green, down the slope, same over, catches the edge. The stuff you dream of as a quick bowling here at Lords. Then something of a consolidation. Then Labuschagne playing away from his body. A more straightforward catch behind the wicket for Verena. We'll come to Marnus in more depth later. Then a screamer, which is almost underrated in the context of the day, down the leg side just before lunch. He had to go a long way down leg, Jansen bowling, to get rid of Head, who was the player of the match and the most decisive cricketer on the field on day one of the previous World Test final when wickets were falling around him. So that kind of set the table for South Africa, only for, and I'm sure you'll go on to talk about the middle session, Smith and Webster to almost disregard all of that. I know Webster was incredibly sketchy early on, but Smith looked $1 million. He was 26 at lunch, and he was motoring. His next 40 runs between lunch and getting out, it looked like it was just one of those days that you and I have witnessed so many times before, where he'd be 130 not at stumps. It took a bizarre moment to ultimately remove him, which was the major turning point in the day.
There was that inevitability feeling with Smith where, I mean, particularly the way he played with the swing away from him. He waited for that so well. He played through the offside a lot. He was able to get across and play down to fine leg in that way that he does, but also the ball moving away from him that laced through the covers, sometimes for 4, sometimes just for 1. He was ticking it over. He's made so many hundreds in England, and I was having this thought pop up of, like, how many players would have made 3 different opponents to make hundreds against in England. How many Australians? Because there was one against India in the World Test Championship final, and it just looked like it was a lock here, no matter how well South Africa bowled through that first session, and they were terrific. But they took advantage of the fact that there was a bit of confusion in that Australian order. You've moved everybody around. Things aren't quite the way that they used to. You know, Green sort of playing across the pad, getting the bat skewed, almost a leading edge, that edge into the cordon. Travis Head, who gets caught down the leg side a fair bit, but that wasn't one of those ones off the hip that where you often see players nick it, but more like glancing it into the keeper's gloves. So, and they were able to make Labuschagne make the mistakes that he was making through the Australian summer, where he was just staying at the crease and not looking to do anything. He looked like he thought he had to do a job of just occupying, just batting time, being an opener. And Khawaja, with the same problem that he had through the Australian summer, once again toes off the ground, jumping, fending at a faster bowler. Like, he got out that way, 7 out of 8 times during the India series that I can remember, that when he was getting out to Bumrah a lot, it was always on the hop, not having control because his feet weren't on the ground while he was fending at a ball. Same against Rabada here. It's been a consistent problem for him.
Yeah, look, I think Labuschagne played pretty well until he was out. You know, it's one of those ones where he did a good job. It was bloody tough early on. They could not have bowled, especially Rabada, couldn't have bowled much better early on. The threat that he was possessing was considerable, and it took a lot for them to get through. I mean, it was a half an hour duck for Khawaja because there just weren't the opportunities to score when he was facing Rabada. And down the other end, Jansen was doing a fine job. But then ultimately, it was Labuschagne that got Australia going until he was out. And the issue he's got is that he's now the guy. There's always one guy in any top 6 at Test level who is in the death seat. And Labuschagne's gone from, I guess if you want to use tennis terms, he was the number 1 seed and now he's the number 6 seed. So he's next man out. And we know that when they get to the West Indies, regardless of the result here, it'll be kind of in footy terms, round one again. Round one's when you play the kids. You don't play them in the grand final. So it means that the onus is on Labuschagne to make not just 17 and start well, but go on and make 117. Hasn't made a test ton in a couple of years, and there have been important contributions throughout, and I absolutely thought he should play in this match for reasons of, well, big bodies in grand finals and that type of thing. But now getting out that way, sort of fifth, sixth stump line, not a huge amount of foot movement. At the time he got out, having got a bit of a start, that will stand out for different reasons. And as for Green, I suppose that's an occupational hazard when batting in the top three as well, getting a ball that decks away when you're new to the crease. I don't think it's about where he was batting. It's more about when performing that role, anyone could be getting a delivery that does that. And Rabada was on fire early on. So I don't think they'll be gnashing teeth over that moment in time. However, later in the day, it just felt like Smith. I mentioned it already about being foretold getting a ton. What a lovely, quirky bit of cricket, as Bharat said on our commentary. Imagine you're trying to explain Test cricket to someone from Mars, and you're like, well, there's this guy who's taken 3 wickets in a Test career that's been going for 8 years. He barely bowls, and he goes on to dismiss the informed player on the planet with his 6th delivery. And
the most important one in this match, the one who's clearly the fate of this match is cohering around this performance.
Yeah.
And the thing that Smith does is hold concentration. That's always been the hallmark for his career, is that it doesn't matter if you try to get a bit funky, if you jig the bowling around, if you put someone unexpected on, he doesn't care. And they weren't doing it to get in Smith's head, they're just doing it to change the bowling around.
It was legit to get Maharaj bowling from the other end. Everyone could see it. There was no surprise. They had 4 out on the rope for Smith, so they were happy to concede a single in that over rather than concede a boundary and just kind of get through the 6 balls. But to the credit of Markram, he did generate loads of work on that ball with the overspin. We know he bowls a lot in short form cricket. He's he's a part-timer at Test level, but he's quite a useful asset with the ball in white ball cricket. And Smith expected turn that wasn't there. It dipped on him, edge taken. And then what a great snaffle from Marco Jansen. I've already mentioned the catching behind the wicket before lunch, but to pull that off, it was their only wicket in the middle session. I saw our mate Dan Gallen at tea, and I said, well, look, because of that, it still feels like honours even. So much is going to rely upon what happens next. And what do you know? 5 for 20 was Australia's collapse, and it all started with Alex Carey missing a reverse sweep from the first ball he faced from Maharaj after tea. And sometimes, one player can have the finger pointed at them, and he started in such a sprightly way before tea, reaching 21 by the short break, but it's the Carey dismissal that basically opened up an end, and from there it was Rabada who ran through it.
Reverse sweep, missed it, and away he went. So it's not the kind of thing that's going to look very flattering. No. Going back on the replays, Webster as well, that way he was so far outside the line of his body, that ball that he reached for and poked at. So I think you could look at the Smith, Webster, Carey dismissals. They're the players who have got themselves settled and have contributed heavily to their own downfall rather than being done in by great bowling. But the tail, it was a lot harder to expect them to do much. You've got Rabada, you've got Jansen, you've got the pace that they're bowling at, you've got the accuracy, you've got the cut off the pitch, and they just hit the stumps 3 times running. Oh,
this bloke shitting the stumps all day. It was a feature of the day's cricket. A bit of background noise today, but that's the way it works when you're doing test match wraps at the back of the ground. The way in which the Australian big three all hit the stumps as well. Rabada splayed them twice. Superb bowling really at the end to the tail. The ball to Cummins might have, I don't want to say kept low, it implies something about a surface which was great today, but it didn't get up as much as Cummins thought perhaps, and it hit the top of off. Exactly what you want to do if you're Rabada bowling from that nursery end, beating him on the outside edge and still keeping the stumps in play. But by that point, the only caveat with Webster is that by that point he's batting with the lower order and he's trying to play the game a little bit here. I think it was the 5th ball of the over. He was searching for a single to keep the strike, and you can see where those things happen in those circumstances. But on the whole, Webster fought bloody hard.
He did a job so well. It wasn't beautiful to watch. It wasn't sort of controlled in the same way as Smith was, but he built into that innings. He looked calm. There's something so interesting about, you're used to seeing, the good batters are usually short because it's easier you get your margin for error for a bowler is smaller if the player's short. So the great players have generally tended to be on that side of things. And then Australia have Green and Webster walking in going, these are 2 of our top 6. And these are skilled operators who've got the hand-eye coordination, who've got the physical ability to transcend the fact that it should be more awkward for them to play the ball. But he was just able to place it nicely for for ones here and there. I've supported Smith so well, and he did the job twice against India in Sydney, and he's done a job again here.
Just want to back over the Rabada story here. And obviously Jansen's in the wickets as well, but especially Rabada. The lack of Test cricket that this guy's getting to play. He's playing his 71st this week. He's got, I think, about 332 wickets, I want to say. He overtook Alan Donald today, which is a real marker. 4th most for South Africa ever. And he's got some all-time greats of the game ahead of him. But, he's taking these at better than 22. He's got a strike rate that for players that have played more than 20 Test matches is the best ever. It's probably 38 after today, which is a ridiculous rate to take wickets. Now, I know that bowling in Test cricket progressively, numerically, has gotten easier for Rabada the deeper he's gotten into his career. Since the advent of the World Test Championship in 2019, it basically coincides with the start of the wobble seam era. He's one of the best exponents of wobble seam bowling ever, in addition to being such a mighty competitor. So the second time that Rabada has taken a 5-wicket bag on day one here at Lord's, he did exactly the same thing to rout England in what became a 3-day test in 2022. This will probably be a 3-day test. Hard to see it being as straightforward for South Africa as it was last time around, owing to the fact that they found themselves in this deep hole by stumps on day one. But still, just wanted to close out our conversation on the first 2/3 of the day by saying that Kagiso Rabada, I just wish he got the chance to play 100, 120 Test matches. He just turned 30 the other week. He should be at the peak of his powers in this format. Instead, it'll be, I think it's 9 months, 10 months till the next time he pulls on the creams for South Africa. And that is, again, one of these reminders of the disparity of opportunity between the big three and oftentimes the rest.
Yeah, and between the big three and the big four for Australia, those fast bowlers have all got to play such a bulk of Test cricket. They came out and they played like it today. This isn't all hindsight stuff. I was saying to whoever would listen at the time that I thought 200 was a pretty good score for Australia, given that South Africa's batting has been fragile at times, and given the bowling resources that they had, I thought that would certainly be competitive, and that's the way it looked so far. So Starc coming out and getting swing immediately, bowling with pace, generating good lift. He gets Markram to play on a ball that jumps at him and swings in, takes the inside of the bat, and it's hard not to let that get back onto the stumps with that gap there. And then Starc with that extra bounce that takes the edge that goes flying into the cordon as well, where Khawaja takes the catch, Cummins gets one, Hazelwood gets one. Cummins hitting the stumps in that way that he does, that sort of one that slides in a bit towards middle and off and decks away a bit towards off. We've seen it so many times.
It's just supreme. They've hit the stumps 3 times out of the 4, and the one that was caught in the cordon, good snaffle from Khawaja, another one where he's going behind the keeper, like the one with Bettingham to remove him earlier in the day. But the stumps were constantly in play. I mean, South Africa are 4 for 43. They've absorbed a lot of overs already. They couldn't put pressure back on because the bowling was just too good. I saw a lot of chatter online about Hazelwood spotting the team as it relates to Boland, and there's a reason why they choose that thoroughbred whenever he's fit and available and ready to roll, especially on grounds like Lord's where he's playing his 4th Test match. And some bowlers, as I said on the preview podcast yesterday, just so well suited to bowling here at this ground, and Hazelwood is absolutely one of those. He does it at both ends as well. He's not like a guy who only bowls at the pavilion end. He got swung around after 3 frugal overs to bowl from the nursery end towards the end of play, and he picked up the 4th wicket in the sequence, castling Stubbs about the 5th time the middle and off stumps were splayed across the day. And the ball that Cummins sent down to knock over Wiam Mulder, who just couldn't score. Now, Wiam Mulder's a bit of a makeshift number 3 at the moment. He's an all-rounder, made 100 against Bangladesh, different gravy facing these 3, and Lyon's yet to have an impact, but facing these 3 out here. And the other one in all of that, the caught in the cordon, what a terrific bit of set-up bowling from Starc. Off the back foot balls of his feet, Rickleton hits a lovely boundary through cover point. Next ball goes fuller. Doesn't try and bowl the pretty length, goes fuller. Beats him on the outside edge. Next ball, Rickleton, same length, leaves alone. 4th ball in the sequence, feels duty bound to have another crack at it. Swinging ball, caught in the cordon. I don't reckon I've seen Mitchell Starc bowl many better spells than that in his long and illustrious Australian career. He takes 2 for not many, but it wasn't about the runs he conceded. It was the way in which he was utterly relentless this evening, and that takes a fair bit to do after you've lost 5 for 20 and you're a little bit shell-shocked. The onus moved on to the senior quicks, and all of them delivered, all in the space of an hour.
Yeah, it was, I mean, Starc is closing on 400 wickets, and we've had these conversations before on the show about how there's this incongruity that, at least with some people, he still feels underrated. He still feels like they go, oh, well, it goes around a bit, doesn't he? But he's racing up those charts, and he was the one who was, I hesitate to use the cliche, but set the tone. Can we say he set the tone?
Well, yeah, I reckon you can. He did set the... They all bloody set the bloody tone. They're all brilliant. I mean, how do you separate the three of them?
Barbershop trio, triplet?
Yeah. And the way that, the fact that Hazelwood got in late as well, and remembering that Cummins down the slope, the way he did it to England, on what felt like a similar evening as well here 2 years ago. I think that was night 4, and this is of course night 1, but same kind of vibe, right? Angling in, decking away, standing it up off the seam. There's a reason why this guy averages 22 at test level, and he's nearing 300 test wickets. Stark's nearly playing his 100th test. They're so durable, they're so effective, and they are very much the reason why, after being bowled out for 212, Australia are the team who take first day honours. Jeff, we'll move towards the Hall of Fame. Yes. I'm going to give you the microphone, and you can pad out and start telling me about New Brew, who you've only just learned about.
Okay, yeah, I have been learning about them. They're not spelt the way that you would expect. It's NOO, it's BRU. Neither of those words are the way that it would be conventionally spelled, because I understand that this is a joint that are not doing things conventionally. Adam's drinking a beverage at the moment, a liquid that looks like mermaid elixir. It's like the colour of a nice bit of Caribbean Sea where we'll be in a couple of weeks. It's that kind of vibe.
I was going to chug the whole thing until I realised I was spilling it down my front like I did with Barat yesterday in the preview show. I wouldn't want to do that 2 days in a row for a brand new partner. But yeah, New Brew, they're a supplement. So that starts to tell the story, but they're an awful lot more than that as well, as I belatedly bring up my notes. Right, so they're founded by a chap called Martin Cook in 2020. They've got 150,000 plus people around the world using this stuff. We've got a discount code, newbrew.com/final word, gets you 15% off. This is the strawberry raspberry. Now, you've known me a long time, Jeff. Mm-hmm. No, sorry, it's the strawberry lemonade flavour. It's absolutely brilliant. There's a whole bunch of different types.
What I know is that if a drink is blue, you will drink it.
Quite. And when this came out as blue yesterday, my heart grew. We got a mate called Andrew Donison. Remember the Jaeger bomb was a bit of a thing back in the day? Maybe it still is. Maybe you're a young person still dunking those things.
I doubt it.
Andrew Donison invented, possibly, the Soviet ice bomb, which was the equivalent of that, with Cointreau, lemon rusky, and blue Curacao. And he's once said, when it turns blue, my heart grew, and I feel the same way about this. New Brew, though, they're not an alcohol.
No.
This is a UK
much healthier
supplement brand that creates delicious, easy to drink, believe me, they're both of those things, drinks focused on improving brain function. Their products contain natural, brain-friendly ingredients, nootropics, to help you think clearly, stay focused, and feel sharp at any age. So the way I see this is that any comparative advantage I can give me to stay calm in moments of crisis, and I'm not going to say that it was a crisis in the commentary box this morning, but boy, 15 minutes before going on air, there were a bit going on in the SEM box with a few things that weren't quite working the way I hope it would. And I like to believe it's causative that I've had no fewer than 5 New Brew drinks in the last 36 hours. I'm already addicted to the stuff. I bloody love it. It's guided by science.
Is there a point at which you got to stop? Like, do they give you an upper limit?
I did ask Martin. He said about 3 a day is good as gold. Because only one type. I've got more talking points than I could ever possibly go through. Right, we'll get into this. There are whole different types. There's some to help you sleep. That's the cherry one. I had that last night. There's the one that it's their hero products, which is I think the one I'm drinking right now called the Advantage. And there's the one that's that gets you up and about. But you know what? It's not important what they are yet. They're on the website. You can find all of that there. The most important thing to know: it's crafted sustainably in the UK, working with scientists and health advisors. It's trusted globally by athletes, cricketers, others who aren't cricketers, who are also athletes, Olympians, get stuck into this stuff. And it helps people of all ages. They say here from 18 to 100. We should be so lucky to reach 100. For the time being, just go on that website, New Brew, NOOBRU, newbrew.com/final word. Learn more about them. 15% discount simply by jumping on, and you too might be drinking 5 of these a day. Back in a moment with the Hall of Fame. All right, it's me. It's him. It's the final word, our principal partner on season 18 of the podcast, as you well know. Maurice Blackburn Lawyers.
I know that.
We're telling the story of Maurice Blackburn on every show in season 18 and 19. Hey, here's a story about a lawyer of theirs called Connie. Well, it's not about her, but it's about the client that she assisted. A man who stopped working in 2012 because of some mental health struggles. He had been unable to work for more than 10 years, yet they were still able to work out the go with his insurance cover, which is remarkable. They lodged a claim on his behalf, including getting reports from the treating doctors. It was the experienced lawyers who did all of this work for the client. They submitted it on his behalf. It was accepted within 14 days and he received close to $100,000. So that's all about superannuation insurance, something we believe in very much on this program. Google that. And of course, Maurice Blackburn is Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. They are very much on your side. Final Word Hall of Fame, most final word moment of the day. Jeff, why don't you let rip first?
Okay, we're talking about things we believe in. I think we believe in the World Test Championship final. Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not. No one's saying it's perfect. It can't be perfect. The structure can't be perfect. The cricketing world doesn't allow it. But 26,000 plus people rocked up today. Neutral game. Yes, a lot of Australians in London. Yes, a lot of South Africans. But also a lot of English people. A lot of people who just like coming down to Lords, watching a bat and ball getting used. Hopefully watching Australia go badly. I suspect most of them were probably enjoying the first session more than the second and more than the third. But they were here. They turned out. That's not a complete, like you should be getting about 29 to 30 if you'd absolutely packed it, but so there were some gaps here and there. I don't know where, but when I came in, it looked pretty full.
There's a reason why, we all know why it was a paper sellout but not a people sellout today, because a lot of people would have bought tickets on the expectation that India were going to be here. And that's cool. Like, no one is, if I bought tickets to the grand final and Hawthorn didn't make it, I ain't going. Not to say that you could get tickets if Hawthorn weren't playing, but you know the point I'm trying to make. So, look, it was a terrific crowd. The members were queuing up in the usual way. The pavilion was packed, neutral venue. This has been where we've wanted the final from the outset. It's always meant to be at Lords. It does hit different, whether you like it or not. Whether you're a Lords person or you're not a Lords person, whether you're into the history of the game, whether you think it's a crock of shit, it is different when you hear it this ground, whether it's your first time or your 100th time. And that's why they originally conceived of this final being played here. So this was the first day, the first opportunity for it, and the people supported it, and I loved it.
Yeah, it felt good. It felt good having that happen, having people come down just for the sake of watching Test cricket as it was. And it could have been tighter. There were a couple of slightly shaky batting lineups against a couple of bloody good bowling attacks, and that can happen.
A couple of other things. Speaking of the long room, I love, have you seen long room cam that the telly's using? So what they're doing is they're tracking the batters through the long room, up the stairs, up where Usman and Warner and co were abused a couple of years ago, and you get to see them open the dressing room door and go back in, having been dismissed, and you get to sort of, I mean, it's quite an intimate, I mean, it is quite intimate in the pavilion anyway, because it's obviously quite close up, but yeah, that camera angle was one I haven't...
Where does it go from there? Do they follow them in, follow them, put the pads off, follow them into the toilet, into the stall, strides off, sit down, have a moment to themselves? No, camera's poking over the top of the door. Like, where does it end?
Yeah, where Mark Taylor's cracking open a beer with them at the end of the game, singing True Blue or something like that. I love the kids with flags. The very obvious comparison between this week and the other sport that we follow closely. Grand finals, how can you not think of it in those terms? A feature of grand final entertainment forever and a day has been kids with flags. And boy, oh boy, did we have some fucking kids with some fucking flags today. They were everywhere, all over Lords. Fireworks like it was 1999 and it was Tony Blair out there, except absent rain, as was the opening ceremony on that day over a quarter of a century ago. But yeah, I liked the homage to the other code of having big flags and lots of kids.
Big flags, spinning in circles. It's not kosher unless they're spinning in circles. You got to have some very bad interpretive dance in there.
I've got one more here. I jotted this down when Ben Jones came up to me. It's a CricViz one. Rabada's got Cummins 6 times in 60 balls in Test cricket at an average of 2.6 and... I can't read the rest of those notes, but you know what I'm trying to say. A nice little quirky one there that when Rabada was bowling to Cummins, he must have felt pretty good about his chances of getting him. And what do you know? Second ball, middle and off. Well, it was off stump, wasn't it really? Right at the very top of it. For whatever reason, it just works sometimes. And today it works for Kagiso Rabada as it did for the Aussie Quicks. What a nourishing day. I feel so much better having been here.
Yep. We were here, and look, we might get 3 days out of it. We might get 4. We probably won't get 5 unless something remarkable happens, but let us see. That's it. It's been the Final Word Daily.
Get down here tomorrow if you can. Find a ticket. Be part of it. The atmosphere was terrific. We'll be back tomorrow night with our Final Word Daily on Thursday. We thank Maurice Blackburn. We thank Newbury. We thank our marvellous patrons. Patreon.com/Final Word, or the Final Word, I should say. Help us out on there if you wish and join our community. They're all catching up on Friday night. If you join our Patreon between now and Friday, you can catch up with them as well. I'll be there. I assume Jeff will be there. There'll be other Final Word people floating around as well, if that's the type of thing that you like to do. All right, signing off from Lords. See you tomorrow.